Perfection. It always feels maddeningly out of reach, but I think there are ways to get closer to it, and the flow arts can help. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi. I make videos about poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain, and today I'm inspired to talk about perfection, expertise, and how we can attain both. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterror Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing businesses and what they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. And special thanks to non-business friends of the channel, Johnny Howard, Lain Mochinsky, and Becca Bekkonen. Thank you all so very much for your support for my work and my mission. Recently, I started following British YouTuber Mary Spender, and she's really been on a hot streak, covering great topics in terrific depth. If you haven't already, you should really go check her out. One of her recent videos was on the topic of perfection. Perfection. And in the course of it, she basically walked through a greatest hits of things that inspired my own journey at the beginning of the 2010s. The Cliffs Notes here are that Mary, like me, has long been obsessed with the idea of gaining expertise in a skill, and more specifically, in perfecting it. Watching her talk about her journey inspired me to look back at my own journey and why the goal of achieving perfection was one that I was and continue to be so taken with. And more specifically, why I think things like music and especially the flow arts are well suited to learning the techniques for perfecting a skill. So let's start off by talking about my own journey first. Poi spinning is actually the third creative career that I've embarked on in my life, and the others followed a remarkably specific trajectory. I would find something creative that would inspire me, and I would dive into learning more about it. I'd read books, subscribe to magazines, back when that was a thing, and practice, endless hours. And I would usually see an initial burst of success. My skills would surpass many of those around me, and I'd get to feeling like I was good at this thing, and I had found my passion in life. I thought that the improvement in skill was directly commensurate with how good of a fit this thing was for me as a person, and I'd dive into it with body, mind, and soul. And then I'd hit a plateau. Maybe it would happen slowly, maybe it would hit me like a ton of bricks, but either way, I'd find myself in a position where, despite practicing the same number of hours, I wasn't actually getting any better. Sometimes my peers would begin to overtake me in skill and recognition. Sometimes I just wasn't getting the same charge out of it that I once did, and all that really discouraged me. Sound familiar? It wouldn't shock me. A lot of us go through this process and find ourselves frustrated again and again with the results. Many of us then decide that this wasn't actually our thing after all, and move on to the next skill, only to have the pattern repeat again and again. What broke the cycle for me was reading a book called Mastery by George Leonard, wherein he not only outlined the exact cycle I'd been going through, but also offered up a solution. Commit to the thing and learn to love the plateau, because you're going to wind up spending a whole lot of time on it. It just so happened that I'd started spinning poi right about the time that I read his book, and it became a foundational work for me in understanding my potential with the art and where I could go with it if I applied myself in the right way. As time went on, I dove deeper into the literature around how people achieve expertise in various fields, and came across the research of Anders Ericsson, which has since and somewhat inaccurately been popularized as the 10,000 hour rule. The basic idea is this. When you take a cohort of people held up by their peers as having achieved expertise in a given skill, you find that the average amount of practice that it took them to achieve that feat is around 10,000 hours, or roughly 10 years of regular part-time practice. But I also ran across a lot of research not just on how much, but also what kind of practice leads to those achievements. This is one of the problems with how Ericsson's research was simplified and popularized. Because it's not simply that you need to do the same thing for 10,000 hours and poof, expertise achieved. It's that you have to engage in what's called deliberate practice in order to get there. And the trick here is that deliberate practice is hard. So what makes practice deliberate? Ericsson's research defines deliberate practice as having the following three qualities. Number one, it's designed specifically to improve performance. Doing this involves identifying the skills you currently have and in what way those skills are currently lacking and can be improved. One example from my own work, I've noticed the gunslingers I do with my left hand have less stable planes than those that I perform with my right. So I begin every practice session doing a series of drills with only my left hand to balance the two out. Number 2, you receive immediate feedback on the success of your results. If there's a long lag between the practice you're doing and the outcome of said practice, it can make it difficult to know what you still have to improve on. This is really easy to see at work with poi because if you're unsuccessful in your attempt at a given trick, technique, or move, it's pretty likely you're gonna hit yourself, and that makes for some very important, if not always pleasant feedback. And finally, the skill you're practicing needs to be able to be repeated. A lot. Repetition builds familiarity. A lot of people who've taken workshops or classes from me will know that I'm a stickler for reps. I don't just want you to get the trick. I want to know that you can do 10 reps of it at the drop of a hat. That repetition is what gives you the muscle memory necessary to pull off that trick whenever you want to. So the formula for achieving expertise is actually pretty simple. Design your practice around things you want to improve on. Make sure you get immediate feedback on the efficacy of that practice, and repeat it copiously and frequently. Repeat this process regularly for roughly a decade, and voila, expertise. As some of you may be picking up, each of these characteristics is something that the flow arts are actually pretty good at providing. Not only does spinning props give you access to instant feedback, but doing it repetitively is kind of baked into the sauce. Once you get a new trick, who doesn't like to bust out a bunch of reps of it? Doing so used to be an entire genre of video on the internet. The one tricky part is designing your practice around improvement. Many of us do this in a fairly undirected fashion, while others will, say, pick a harder trick they'd like to learn and spend a bunch of time drilling the skills necessary to get that trick down. Both are totally valid. But if you'd like some outside help guiding your practice to make it more deliberate, I would just like to point out that I'm currently hosting live stream classes every week where I'm teaching basic poi techniques with an eye towards learning how to dance and express yourself with poi from the very beginning. If that sounds up your alley, you can sign up over at crowdcast.io/DrexFactorPoi. Now, learning about achieving expertise and how to get there wasn't really the end of the road for me, nor was it for Mary either. We both became really inspired by stories of people who'd applied these concepts, whether they were aware of it or not, into their work. Mary cites Jiro Ono, a sushi chef who was profiled in the 2011 documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi, as an example of this ethos in effect. And I have to say, I also watched this documentary years ago and absolutely loved it. Seeing the way that Jiro approaches his craft and his obsession with continuing to improve, even in his elderly years, was hugely inspiring for me. One of my favorite reviews of the movie cites the frequently cited 3 Michelin stars Jiro's restaurant was awarded and includes this pretty choice quote. As he serves a perfect piece of sushi, he observes it being eaten. He knows his staff has recently started massaging an octopus for 45 minutes and not half an hour. Does he search a customer's eyes for a signal that this change has been an improvement? Half an hour of massage was good enough to win 3 Michelin stars. You realize the tragedy of Jiro Ono's life is that there are not, and will never be, 4 stars. I love this. Now, all that said, perfectionism is also something that can be framed along a spectrum. Depending upon who is doing the framing, it can be seen as compulsive or pathological on one extreme, or inspiring and motivating at another extreme. I'm currently reading Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart, and she has this to say about perfectionism. Perfectionism kills curiosity by telling us we have to know everything or we risk looking less than. Perfectionism tells us that our mistakes and failures are personal defects, so we either avoid trying new things or we barely recover every time we inevitably fall short. Now, I do think that Brown is identifying something real and important in this. I've seen perfectionism at its worst put people in a place where they are so afraid of negative judgments that they avoid creating anything for fear of the reception to it. But I don't think that Brown is talking about perfectionism in the same sense that either Mary Spender or I are. Sure, I feel some degree of shame over releasing something that I've created that I know I could have done better on. But that doesn't stop me from creating those things, and it doesn't stop me from striving to get better. At its best, making the commitment to engage in the tools of deliberate practice and, by extension, searching for perfection is an act of humility. It is looking at oneself, seeing and accepting the ways in which one can improve, and looking at that not as a failure of character, but as a temporary state that we ourselves have the ability to change. And to circle back around, I think flow arts is great at this. When we look at a trick that we want to learn but can't do just yet, I don't think that we consider ourselves less than for not knowing how to do it. We need to learn the techniques to get it down. We don't come out of the womb spinning poi, so how can we judge ourselves for not knowing how to do it automatically? Between basically being an ideal laboratory for learning the techniques associated with deliberate practice and being a great space for identifying ways in which we can improve at a skill without falling into self-critical judgment, I think flow arts is somewhat unique in that it gives us a window into all of these facets of achieving expertise. I certainly have taken the lessons learned from the silly hobby of spinning props and applied them to other aspects of my life to become better at creating content, marketing myself, and even improving my friendships and relationships. Anything you want to improve at, you can work on, and flow arts are an excellent way to learn those skills and take them forward into other parts of your life. Sometimes I think it's easier to learn critical skills in an environment that feels like it's not earth-shatteringly important before applying said skills in something that feels like it is. Flow arts are a great sandbox for this particular aspect of improving ourselves and our skills over time. But what has your experience been? Do you find perfectionism and working to achieve expertise intimidating or even destructive? Did the flow arts teach you techniques for self-improvement that have had broader impacts on your life? Leave me a comment and let me know. If you're interested in any of the things that I talked about in this video, I'll leave links to where you can check out my sources and learn more in the description. And hey, if you made it this far, then I'm hoping you learned something or were at least entertained, and I'd love to ask that you help me out then by leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. That helps more people find this content, and that helps me keep on creating it. This video would not be possible if not for the wonderful support of all of these amazing people right here. These are my Flow patrons over on Patreon, and they, along with the people listed down in the description, help to make this video and all the videos on my channel possible. Thank you one and all for your support. Do you like my videos? Do you like my flow sessions, vlogs, reviews, combos, and more? I'm on a mission to bring poi spinning and flow arts to the wider world and help people connect with their brains and their bodies. So help me do it. Head on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and sign up. You can do that at the link in the description or the card that just popped up if you're watching on YouTube. There you can get access to a whole host of awesome rewards and help me along in my mission. Do check that out, please and thank you. If you're interested in checking out more of my content around flow arts culture and the benefits of it, I will leave a link to a playlist down in the description as well as up on screen. The YouTube algorithm also thinks based upon your past viewing habits that you'll like this other video up top too. So maybe give that a look, yeah? Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Make sure to get out to flow, and I will see you with a new video on Wednesday. Peace.